This is Don Drysdale. America is the bowling center of the world. The best male and female bowlers are consistently Americans, yet this country's greatest all-time bowling champion was born in Italy. And although he set many records that still stand, he is best known today for his skill at bowling with two balls at once. I'll tell you about him in just a moment. This program is presented as a public service of the station and your local Army recruiter. Today's Army has openings right now in career fields with a great future, and they'll train you in the job that you pick. Get the details from your local Army representative now. Here's today's story. It's about a little man whose name is Andy Veripapa. He was born in Italy, but his parents moved to the United States in 1903. When he started school, Andy was teased because he spoke with an accent, and he came home covered with bruises and scratches suffered in his weekly encounters with the big boys who teased him because of his accent and his size. One day he told his mother that he didn't want to go to school ever again. She listened to her son and told him, "Andy, you may be short, but you're not a quitter. You're better than any of those big toughs that are making it hard for you. Don't go looking for trouble, but don't let them push you around either." The next day, on his way home from school, Andy saw three of his enemies waiting for him at the corner. He remembered his mother's advice and decided not to look for trouble. So he turned into the first doorway he came to and went inside. Andy had walked into a bowling alley. He had never been in one in his life, and he just stood there gawking at the sight and soaking in the sound. A man walked up to him and said, "Hey, kid, are you here for the pin setter job? Go around behind the alley." Andy hurried around back and was even more surprised to find a dozen other boys back there sweating out their jobs as pin setters. One of them showed Andy what to do, and when he got home that night, he proudly told his mother that he had not only avoided a fight that day, but he had also gotten a job. Well, that job became very special to the youngster. Before long, he had developed a love for bowling and was out in front of the alleys bowling for fun every time it got quiet. And in just a moment, I'll tell you how this chance encounter with a strange game later made Andy one of bowling's immortals. First, here's some important news from the United States Army. George Washington knew that an army couldn't function without good food and plenty of it. 200 years later, this is still true. Today's Army needs young men and women to be Army cooks. Your job and assignment are guaranteed when you qualify, so get cooking when you join the people who've joined the Army. Now back to the true story of a young man who hid in a bowling alley, got hired as a pin setter, and later became America's best bowler, Andy Veripapa. Andy lived in New York all of his life, except for the times that he was on tour, and Andy was in demand on tour. His extraordinary talent with a bowling ball became a legend. In his career, he bowled over 70 perfect games. I can't even break 180. Obviously, he's a member of the Bowling Hall of Fame, yet the thing that Andy is best remembered for today is his exhibition play. Like a fine musician, Andy practiced every day. He developed a feel for the ball that was uncanny. One spring day of 1938, he decided to try bowling left-handed as well as right-handed. A year later, he was equally as good with either hand. It was amazing. From that skill, it was only natural that he try bowling two balls at once. It was a little shaky at first, but as he practiced and developed his coordination, Andy found he had perfect control of each ball, even though he released them simultaneously. Finally, in 1946, Andy developed the most amazing shot that has ever been demonstrated on a bowling alley. He was set up with a 7-10 split. One pin at the very left edge of the alley, the other pin at the very right edge. Using two balls, Andy knocked them down in unison. But that's not the amazing part. You see, he had such perfect control that the spin of the balls would make them cross in the middle of the alley. Then they'd each strike their assigned pin. And then Andy became even more amazing. The pins would be reset. Then Andy would bowl both balls again. This time, they'd have so much action on them that they'd cross twice on the way down the alley, zigzagging each other all the way and still striking home perfectly. Andy called this famous shot his double cross. And this is Don Drysdale, and your Army recruiter may not be a bowler, but he's got a lot on the ball. Find out about careers with a future and join the people who've joined the Army. Until next time, so long, everyone. This is Don Drysdale. What could be more exciting than watching 20 of the most graceful and powerful thoroughbreds in the world thunder down the home stretch? It's for that exciting moment that thousands of lucky spectators shell out a small fortune for tickets to the Kentucky Derby every year. But I'll bet you didn't know that one particular stable and one particular trainer have been responsible more than anybody else for the excitement and popularity of this, the greatest of horse races. This program is a public service brought to you by this station in cooperation with your local Army representative. Same today and get the details on an exciting and demanding career in today's Army. Now, our story. The Kentucky Derby is without a doubt the most written about, talked about, and televised horse race of the year. During the month of May, the city of Louisville, Kentucky, suddenly finds itself a boom town. People come from all over the country and even overseas just to see this one race. The number of tickets are limited, and naturally that makes for a booming black market in Derby seats. Why all the excitement? Well, where else can you see not only the pomp and pageantry of Derby Week in Louisville, but also glimpse the finest horses in America in head-on competition? Who among us will ever forget the sight of Secretariat as Big Red shattered all records and flashed across the finish line? But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of the Derby, and I'll bet you didn't know that a single man, trainer Ben Jones, has been responsible for more Derby winners than any other trainer in history. Well, it's true. On May 3rd, 1952, Plain Ben Jones joined his latest trainee, Hillgale, in the winner's circle at Churchill Downs. The horse had been 11-10 favorite and had not disappointed his trainer. But the race was not without suspense. Hillgale had been particularly nervous and jittery that morning and gave his handlers some trouble when they tried to put him in the starting gate. But then they were off. Hillgale broke slightly late from the inside post position and swerved to the outside shortly after the start. Seasoned jockey Eddie Arcaro was up, though, and Ben Jones, watching from the rail, knew that if anyone could correct the drift, Arcaro could. It took about a half mile, and it seemed like hours to Ben Jones, but Arcaro got a hold on the horse and pushed him to the front. There he remained for the rest of the mile-and-a-quarter classic to finish a full 2 lengths in front of his nearest challenger. Ben Jones was all smiles in the winner's circles that day. Why shouldn't he be? With Hillgale's win, Jones had set a record that has never been equaled in the world of horse racing. I'll tell you just what that record was in just a moment. First, here's some important news from your local Army representative. It takes a special kind of person to stand up and be counted, someone who welcomes a challenge, someone who wants more out of life than just picking up a paycheck. Find out about the challenge and responsibility available with the Army's Combat Arms Enlistment option. Check it out with your nearest Army representative and do something for yourself and your country when you join the people who've joined the Army. Now back to our story. The sport of horse racing draws thousands of spectators every year, and no race generates more excitement among fans and horse breeders alike than the Kentucky Derby. It is undoubtedly the most written about, talked about, and televised horse race of the year. May 3rd was really a red-letter day for the grand old man of Derby racing. During his career, Jones had saddled Triple Crown winners Whirlaway in 1941, Citation in 1948, as well as Derby winners Lauren in 38, Pensive in 44, and Ponder in 49. With the victory that day of Hillgale, Ben Jones had 6 times tightened the girth on a Derby winner, a new record among trainers. And that wasn't the only record set that day. It was also the 5th time that jockey Eddie Arcaro had ridden the winner. It was also the 5th time that a horse from the famous Calumet Farm had won. This is Don Drysdale. Don't horse around with your life. Call your local Army representative today and get the exciting details on a fascinating career in today's Army. Just pick up the phone and join the people who've joined the Army. Till next time, so long, everyone. This is Don Drysdale. It isn't often that a professional athlete can also have a brilliant career as an amateur. Today I'm going to talk about probably the most famous athlete in our century, a woman who won so many amateur contests that she set a world record for all time. This program is presented as a public service of this station in cooperation with your local Army representative. Why not give him a call today and get all the details on an exciting lifetime career in today's Army? And now our story. She was born Mildred Dietrichson. In a family of 4 boys, there was always a lot of competitive pressure on her, but that didn't bother Mildred, and she rose to any challenge. Probably her first attempts in amateur sports are not very well known. The little girl used to practice her jumping when she walked home from school. Starting at the run, she would leap over all the hedges in her neighborhood and check the time when she made it home. By the time she was in high school, Mildred was setting records for the nation's young women. There wasn't one sport that she wasn't excellent at, although her talent really shone when she was involved in individual competition. It wasn't that she was just good, she was unbeatable. She perfected a high-jumping technique which she called the Texas roll. None of her contemporaries could master this difficult maneuver, and it placed Mildred way ahead of everybody. Her dazzling displays in track and field competition continued to amaze the sports world. After all, there were only a handful of truly magnificent women athletes in those days, and Babe, as she was later known, was the best of them all. In fact, this superlative athlete did what no other athlete had ever done or probably will ever do. And I'll tell you more about her incredible career in just a moment. First, here's a message from today's Army. If you're looking for a challenge, today's Army may be for you. If you're tough enough, jobs are available in one of today's Army's combat arms. Good pay and challenging job. Check it out today. Ask your local Army representative how you can join the people who've joined the Army. Now back to our story. It's about an athlete so talented that the world watched whenever she entered a contest. Although Mildred Babe Dietrichson was excellent at any sport she undertook, her true talent was really visible when she entered into individual track and field competition. By the time she was 18, she had perfected a technique she dubbed the Texas roll, which she used in high jumping. This maneuver was so difficult that few could manage it, let alone master it. Babe went on to do even more amazing things. In 1932, she became the first woman athlete in the world to secure 2 gold medals for herself and for the United States at the Los Angeles Olympics. She could have made an even more incredible triple triumph if it were not for the short-sightedness of the Olympic judges. Although Babe smashed the world record for high jumping, the officials disqualified her for using her famous but unorthodox Texas roll. The Americans were furious. How dare the judges set down a black mark on the record of the golden girl of sports? But the judges stood firm. Babe took it in her good-natured grin and set about proving her superiority at an even more furious pace. Though several years later, she eventually abandoned her amateur status to become a professional golfer. Babe Dietrichson will always be remembered for her sterling example for good sportsmanship in the amateur arena. She traveled all over the world, entering in contests against the best athletes other nations had to offer. Babe always won. This was one hell of a woman. But the really incredible and amazing fact was the number of contests that she participated in. Unbelievable as it may seem, Babe Dietrichson officially entered a remarkable 634 amateur contests. But sit down, folks, because that's not all. Of the 634 contests that she entered, Babe won 632. And those 2 defeats can't even really be held against her, for they were not individual events, but team basketball games. This is Don Drysdale. Your local Army representative can show you how to stay a step ahead of the crowd. With over 200 exciting careers to choose from, he can make you an offer that's hard to beat. See him soon and join the people who've joined the Army. Till next time, so long, everyone. This is Don Drysdale. One of the most exhausting and strenuous sports today is none other than the backyard activity which has become so popular, swimming. In order to perfect their style and speed, athletes must spend at least 6 hours a day forcing themselves to their limit. Today, I'm going to tell you about a young woman who was so dedicated a swimmer that she was recognized by the whole world as the best in her class, not only for the time she competed, but for generations. This program is brought to you by your local Army representative in cooperation with this station. Get the details on an exciting and rewarding career in today's Army. Call your local Army representative today. Now our story. You wouldn't think that a swimming champion would come from a chilly spot like Seattle, Washington. In fact, most of America's outstanding swimmers hail from the land of the backyard pools, sunny Southern California. But one young woman was determined to be an exception to that rule, and what an exception she was. Even before she began her amazing athletic career, Helen Madison was a kind of woman that would stand out in any crowd. Her wholesome blonde looks and striking 6 feet height, which was even more exceptional in those days, caused passers-by to turn and stare wherever she went. She was a knockout. She was not short on brains either. By the age of 22, she had authored several books on health, and her warm and vivacious personality had earned her her own local radio show. It was an innovative show for its day and focused mainly on maintaining good health through good nutrition and plenty of exercise. She always prodded her listeners to participate in strenuously athletic sports and would never dream of asking them to do anything that she didn't do herself. Her favorite sport was swimming, and even in that chilly climate, there were few days that she did not take to the water, as the local press delighted in reporting. One day on her show, she interviewed a former Olympic swimming champion who was doubtful of her swimming ability and challenged her to prove that the stories about her swimming were more than just publicity stunts. "Why not enter a real competition, Helen?" he said on the air. "I'll arrange the whole thing. You just show up in Los Angeles on May 15th. Miss Madison, of course, accepted, and I'll tell you the amazing result in just a moment. First, here's a good word from your local Army representative. Do you feel like you're in a rut? Maybe what you need is a challenge. Today's Army has tough, demanding jobs for young men and women. When you qualify, you pick your job, and the Army will guarantee it. Call or visit your nearest Army representative today. Get out of the rut and join the people who've joined the Army. Now back to our story. It's about a talented and beautiful young woman who became a world-renowned athlete. Helen Madison, with her long blonde hair and startling 6 feet height, was a popular local radio personality in her hometown of Seattle. You wouldn't think that a swimming champion would come from a chilly town like that, but then Miss Madison was never one to do things in a conventional way. Her radio show, for example, was the first of its kind, a show which focused on eating right and getting plenty of exercise in order to stay healthy. Helen herself was very athletic, and her favorite sport was swimming. Even in chilly Seattle, she took to the water whenever she could. And it was this pastime and the publicity she received in the local papers that prompted a former Olympic swimming champion who was being interviewed on her show to issue a challenge to her on the air. He publicly dared her to enter a swimming competition in Los Angeles, and of course she accepted. She spent the next 3 weeks training daily in an indoor pool and also came up with a few training innovations of her own. In order to make her 6-foot frame as streamlined as possible, she trimmed her long hair boyishly short and shaved the hair on her arms and legs to reduce water friction, a technique which has only really been appreciated in the last few years. Helen even designed a special swimming suit for the event, a sleek knit tank suit. Her efforts paid off. Not only did she win in Los Angeles, but her time in the 400-meter freestyle set a new world's record. She even acquired a new title, Queen of the Waters. By the year 1932, this remarkable woman held 15 world's records out of the 16 recognized categories. This is Don Drysdale, and don't wait, take the plunge. Call your local Army representative today. He has over 200 exciting and rewarding careers to offer you in today's Army. Just pick up your phone and join the people who've joined the Army. Till next time, so long, everyone. This is Don Drysdale. If you stand 6'5" and weigh close to 300 pounds, you're a candidate for pro football. Today, I'll tell you about one of America's greatest linemen and how he made a name for himself in another sport. This program is brought to you by your local Army representative. Today's Army offers you a lifetime career with good pay, security, and a chance to earn promotions as your skills improve. Find out about the jobs now open in today's Army. Now, our story. It's about one of the greatest football stars to ever walk on a gridiron, a man who eventually made a lifetime career for himself in another sport. His name is Cal Hubbard. Cal was born on a little farm in Missouri in 1900. As he grew up, he helped his dad with the chores, and by the time that he was a teenager, all of that pitching hay and plowing had built him into a big boy. He weighed over 200 pounds and stood almost 6.5 feet tall. Obviously, this giant attracted the attention of the football coach, and it wasn't long before Cal was holding down the right side of the line for Keatisville High. Later, he played college ball for his idol, Coach Bo McMillan, at Centenary College in Louisiana. Now, on a tiny school like that, it's easy for an athlete to be overlooked by the sports writers and by the pros. But Cal was so good that he was mentioned on several All-America teams and was signed as a pro by the New York Giants in 1927. He dominated every game he was in. He was huge and he was mean, and he ran the 111 seconds flat. But he had a very important extra quality that every outstanding athlete must also possess. He was cool and level-headed. He outsmarted his opponents time and time again, and in a game that's known for its roughness and unseen foul, Cal was a policeman. When an opposing player got too rough, Cal was a man who cooled him out. In 1929, he asked to be traded to Green Bay. New York was too big for him, and he wanted the small-town life. There, he immediately won the respect of both the fans and the rest of the league. In 1930, George Reed, an opposing lineman, smashed Cal in the face with his elbow as they blocked each other. On the next play, he did it again. On the next play, Cal came up under him, flipped him over on the field, and ran across his chest as he went on to sack the quarterback. Yet, Cal was so cool about the way he squashed unfair players that he was a hero. Both fans and officials assumed that if he roughed up an opposing player, then the player probably deserved it, and very few fouls were ever called on the gentleman giant. He played until he was 36 years old, and then he hung up his spikes forever. In 1963, Hubbard was selected as one of the first players named to the Football Hall of Fame, and yet, in his entire career, Hubbard was paid only $150 a game. Yet, he made a career of sports, and today he's better known for the game that replaced football, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment. First, here's important news from your Army recruiter. George Washington knew that an Army couldn't function without good food and plenty of it. 200 years later, this is still true. Today's Army needs young men and women to be Army cooks. Your job and assignment are guaranteed when you qualify. Get cooking when you join the people who've joined the Army. Now back to our story. The true professional history of one of America's greatest pro linemen, Cal Hubbard. Cal is one of the charter members of football's Hall of Fame, yet today he's remembered by most people for his participation in another of our country's most popular sports. You see, when Cal retired from football at the age of 36, he went to work in the game he loved even more than football, and that sport was baseball. Obviously, he was a little too old to start a brand new career on the baseball diamond, so he did the next best thing. He became an umpire, first in the minor leagues and then in the majors. His reputation as a football policeman and his giant size didn't hurt him a bit either. Nobody, but nobody, ever argued with this massive, rough, tough ex-tackle. He was known as the best umpire in the league, and when he retired at the age of 65, Cal Hubbard was supervisor of all American League umpires. He was one of the few men I know who made a name in one game and made a career of another. This is Don Drysdale. If a lifelong career is your game, talk to your local Army representative and join the people who've joined the Army. Until next time, so long, everyone.